Good morning. I'm Ellen Gilligan, President and CEO of the Greater Milwaukee Foundation, and I'd like to welcome you to On the Table Milwaukee 2020. 4 years ago, the Greater Milwaukee Foundation launched On the Table as a way to bring our community together around important conversations and deepening our commitment to making Milwaukee a greater place for all. Those conversations have turned to action, and I'm so grateful that you have all joined in this conversation today around one of the most important issues facing our community: healing racial justice. The Greater Milwaukee Foundation is 105 years old and one of the largest and oldest community foundations in the country. And we are committed to advancing racial equity in this community by investing in people, place, and partnerships to ensure that everyone in the Greater Milwaukee region has an opportunity to thrive. We are so pleased that over this 4 years, thousands of people across our region have engaged in important conversations, taking ideas to action. And we understand at the foundation that we are at a moment in time that has intersecting crises of a health pandemic, an economic pandemic, and a call and a reckoning around racial justice and healing. We are proud that so many people have joined us for this conversation. We believe that we are greater together, and we can advance this community through racial healing and justice. We believe that there is a brighter future where all of us have an opportunity to thrive. So I want to thank and acknowledge everyone who has participated today. I want to acknowledge that we are on native land. And I also want to turn our program over today to Anita Makaka, who will tell you about the wonderful program that we will have over the next 3 days. So let's get started on this important conversation. We can make transformative change in this community. So let's get started.
Thousands of people at hundreds of tables from all corners of our region are making an impact.
On the Table Milwaukee is powerful because it brings people together.
We are breaking bread and connecting communities.
It brings diversity to the table of age, of color, of community.
There is a much greater awareness of needs in our community. Homelessness, transportation, childcare.
We're going to be successful by us working together and supporting each other.
People are collaborating, partnering,
I see people of really different thought.
and strengthening our community together. Something remarkable happens when you mix diversity and dialogue.
Anytime I would see people that were of different cultures.
We don't get to do that very often today, to come together with people whose backgrounds are not necessarily the same.
Acknowledging each other, seeing each other, and listening to each other's story. I think that will help us build that resilience. It starts around the table.
When personal stories are shared,
I didn't have a father in my life either, so.
connections and commitment deepen.
I don't know one person who left today's On the Table not moved and deeply impacted by the conversations we had here today. Ideas were exchanged and tears were shed.
It motivates us to be present and to be a part of the solution.
Somebody actually said that they were being vulnerable, so it really is a safe space for people to bring their full self.
It is so gratifying to see so many people want to engage in moving our community forward. Since the first year the Greater Milwaukee Foundation introduced On the Table, we have moved from conversation to dialogue to relationship building to ideas to action.
Spanning topics like advancing racial equity.
People want more transportation. They want more opportunity. They need funding.
Promoting entrepreneurship.
And I think that you have to do that through cross-cultural partnerships. You have to do that through cross-sector partnerships.
And criminal justice reform.
We know that people are really passionate for change, that transformational change is coming.
If On the Table continues to engage the community on this topic, you'll see stronger families, you'll see more men active in their families.
Standing up to bullies.
I think the youth have a voice and we're here to listen.
And harnessing faith to fight gun violence.
To be able to share my story is powerful because I can change the narrative for other women.
Sharing your story is healing, but we understand that we need to enact policy so that other people don't go through the same things.
Where collaboration today is generating solutions for tomorrow. Your voice matters at On the Table MKE.
Hi everyone, and welcome to On the Table MKE. My name is Anita Mogaka, and I have the honor and privilege of moderating this conversation today on the theme of healing justice. So as Ellen mentioned, the next 3 days of On the Table will focus on the theme of healing justice. And at the foundation, as we were thinking about what On the Table could look like this year, it was important for us to center the well-being of the community with the impacts of COVID, the social unrest. This is the moment right now for us to really come together with the voices that have been at the forefront of this movement, for us to have a conversation about ideas that will positively move us into action. And so to kick things off, I'm super excited because we have none other than Frank Nitti, as most of you know, who has been at the forefront of the movement, has been leading marches, and most recently led a march all the way to Washington, D.C. And so I will let Frank do all the talking and let him introduce himself as he shares a little bit more about his background, his journey, and his role as an activist in Milwaukee. So Frank, I'll kick it off to you.
Thank you so much. Good morning to everyone. I really appreciate this table. I appreciate this opportunity from the Greater Milwaukee Foundation, and the opportunity to be with Representative Bowen, Kaylin Hayward, Tiffany Henry, and you as well. I appreciate everyone on this panel, big name people that I looked up to, and people that I appreciated my whole time being out here as an activist. I think that the experience that I got from going to DC and what's going on today with everything in the world with George Floyd was amazing, that people came together across the country. A lot of us have been fighting for these things for years. It's not like when George Floyd died, we got a new fire that just burned inside of us. It was really more of the country that woke up. So for me, like I've been out here, specifically, people know me from 2016 with Seville Smith. And right before that, Jay Anderson was murdered. And a lot of things for me, growing up, it was always difficult dealing with racism, dealing with the police in Milwaukee, and what they did, the things that they did, the way that they treated me as an African-American growing up, being pulled over excessively, being bothered. When I grew up, you couldn't wear a hat in the car. You couldn't ride 4 deep. Those were rules that we had so that we wouldn't get in trouble when we dealt with the police, or we wouldn't get harassed by the police. And it still happened, even though we had those type of rules in place. So as an activist, I began my true activism work, people would say, in 2016, even though I was already doing a lot of things before that. But it was when Jay Anderson was killed and by the Wauwatosa police, and Officer Joseph Mensah, actually, to be exact, who has killed 3 people as of now altogether. And when he died, I remember being at work. And I never even sought out to be like a leader. I never even sought out to be like the leader of things or to be leading a charge. I just wanted to be a part of things. I wanted to be, as a Black person, to like do my part. And I never could. I was always at work. I was always like working at my job that was like a 2 to 10 job. And I knew this wasn't my career. I knew this wasn't what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. So when I left my job, I just wanted to be a part of like the movement. I wanted to be a part of things. So I originally left my job, and I got out there when Seville Smith was killed. And I think the most difficult part about everything that's going on is you fight for a lot of families, and you don't always get justice. A lot of times you don't get justice, and you continue to fight, and you continue to fight, and you continue to fight. So this time it felt different. When I looked at what was going on around the country, when I looked at what was going on as far as like around the world and how people felt about this situation, George Floyd wasn't fleeing from the police. He didn't have anything in his hand that could look like a weapon. The officer was not at all by any means a threat. So this was a case where I think the country got separated because when you looked at what happened with George Floyd, it was like either you agree with what's going on in this country is wrong at this point, or you just don't want to see it. And that separation prompted massive marches across the country where I went out and I began to march with the People's Revolution, a great group in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, that does great things. I truly support everything they do. And Khalil Coleman and his movement, and they do a lot of great work here. Originally, we were marching together, and along the way, I started to branch off and do like individual things as far as like to strengthen what we were doing in the community that was solid and that was moving. And I wanted to do like things that were a little bit different, try different tactics to try to see what we could do to get change. And as I branched off by myself, what prompted me to walk to DC, we had already marched or protested in the community for 60 something days in our community at that point. And a lot of times marches will die down. So originally when I heard about the George Floyd Get Your Knee Off My Neck march, I was like, man, I want to go to that. I have to go to that. That's like, I'm 39 years old. That's like our version of the Million Man March. That's like our version of like what Martin Luther King them did. It only comes around every 10 or 20 years. I was too young to go before. And this time I was like someone that could be a part of things. And I was like, man, I just want to go out and connect with other activists. That was my whole goal. And then when I found out it was on Martin Luther King's the day that he gave the speech in Washington, DC, I was like, man, I should walk there, and it was just something that had like popped in my head. And I always make a joke about it. Like, I had thought about it, but I wasn't sure if I was going to do it. And then I put it on Facebook. So, it was real after that. That was like always my joke about it. Like once you put it on Facebook, people were never going to let you live it down. Like it would have destroyed my activism career. And they'd be like, remember that time he said he was going to walk and then he didn't even go, so I was like that pressure, you know what I mean? Even though I didn't do any media, even though I didn't do any interviews, I still like posted it, and it was real after that. And I was like, I'm gonna walk to DC. And there was a mural that was being done by some African-American women in Milwaukee that had did a mural of me and Khalil Coleman, and Vaughn Mays and Marquesa Tucker. Shout out to them as well, great activists in our community. And this particular mural, I was like supposed to leave before that date, but I ended up leaving after that day because I wanted to make sure that I was there to honor them for actually thinking of me to be in that mural. So it made it a 30-mile-a-day trip. So it turned it into something that was just like a march or something that you had to like be athletically in shape for. And a lot of the things we weren't prepared for were like not knowing what shoes to wear. You know what I mean? I've always bought like shoes because of how they look. I ain't never bought shoes because of how they felt. So the physical toll that it weighed on us, the hills, the mountains, we weren't like prepared for that, mentally and physically. We weren't prepared for the racism that happened along the way. We weren't prepared for like a lot of the things that we faced. And spirituality for me and a lot of the individuals that were there was a big factor. I prayed a lot. I saw a lot of things where it seemed like God was like talking to us, you know what I mean? In a sense where it seemed like the world was a beautiful place. The people were ugly in it. You know what I mean? We were walking across America and we saw such a beautiful America. And a lot of times we were running into individuals that just like did not want us to march through their communities, that did not want like African Americans in their community. And it showed me a different side. We were marching for police brutality, but what we uncovered was racism across the country, a country that still had a lot of the true racist values from the 60s, where when they were in these communities that were like unseen, they were able to operate in this way. And to bring light to that, I thank God for that part of the journey, to be strong enough to have my body hold up through the conditions of the journey. And like a lot of things people didn't know about it when I walked, like the 27th, was the last day that we marched, and it was the 1-year anniversary of my dad dying. And I didn't talk about it because I didn't want to take away from the George Floyd march. But the very last day that we marched on the 27th was the day that my dad passed away last year. So that was a difficult day. The 28th was the day that my best friend passed away. The day that we got there. And so that was a difficult thing. And I think that as we marched, to find the strength with the group that I was with, I appreciate every single individual I marched with. They came together in a way that was different. To have people that were individual strangers, to have no fights on the trip, to have no one physically assault each other on the trip, to have people be able to sleep in rooms with strangers on the trip, to have those things happen for African Americans and the other groups of people that was with us, it was really an eye-opening experience to go through these communities. As we marched, we ran into, like I said, a lot of racism, but it really woke me up because the people that walked with me were white, Black, Hispanic, LGBTQ. They were all different races of people. And on this march, when you have all different races of people marching and you have like groups of white people that are telling you like, don't come through our community, it really makes you realize what America's about. Like, we represented what the true America was about. The Black Lives Matter movement. It's all these different races of people, all these different sections of people that are marching for Black Lives to Matter. It's showing America that this is what America is. We are a representation of what America's supposed to be. And as I crossed the country and as I saw that, it made me realize that this was bigger than just the George Floyd situation. This was bigger than just white people being racist. This is something that has to change forever. I always say my grandkids can't march for the same things that my grandfather marched for. And as we marched and the world saw what we were going through, some of the key things that we did was like not engage, not go back and forth with individuals. We didn't want to show the world, to give the world any excuse as to why white people were treating us like this. That was the hardest part, to tell people you can't react to be called the N-word and tell the people marching with me, you can't say anything back. You can't do anything about it. And to ask them to do that was difficult for me as a person, to ask them to do this while we were dealing with the physical elements, the mental aspect of what we went through, and the things that people are still going through now because of the march, was a difficult thing. But I wanted to show people something, that we weren't going to let this die down. We were going to actually step it up. We weren't going to allow this to be something that fizzled out like in the past. And as you can see, when Jacob Blake got shot, people were still marching for George Floyd, where in the past we had stopped marching for a cause, and then something else would happen and we started marching and they would just wait us out and they would just wait us out. It's a different time. And I think that a lot of people need to understand that when we fight for Black Lives Matter, we're fighting for all lives at the same time. When they change the laws, it won't say laws are being changed for Black people. They'll change laws for all people. They're not just going to change laws for African Americans. They'll change laws because they're unfair to African Americans, but the legislative change will not say for Black people. It will be for all people. So when we fight for these laws for Black Lives to Matter, when we fight for these things, we're fighting for these things because we need to be in a world where everyone can be treated equally. And that should be nothing that anyone's arguing about. I saw that a lot of things were going on politically as we marched, and it's more, it's deeper than ever this time. It's more imperative than ever that Black people vote, that all people vote. I'm pushing for all people to vote. If you are not registered to vote, go register to vote. It's very important for you to register to vote. Voting will be a large, gigantic, it's a bigger deal than ever to vote this year. I'm not telling people to vote for any candidate right now. I'm not telling people to even pick a side right now. All I'm telling you is to register to vote. Your voice is important. Your voice needs to be heard across the country. Whatever you believe in. I believe in freedom of speech. I believe in people to be free. Hey, if you believe in whatever you believe in, then vote. For me personally, when it comes to the Black Lives Matter movement, I think that Black people need to vote for their cause. They need to make sure that they vote for what we're fighting for. We have politicians that are on this actual panel right now because it's important to vote, no matter what people think about the past or the system the way it is. The only way we can change that system is by voting. Literally, there's no way that we can get politicians in office that will actually change the system. And to educate ourselves about primary voting is very important as well. We need to make sure that we have candidates that represent what we are talking about and what we're doing all the way to the end. And the education of voting is very important in our community. And that was something else I saw along the way as we marched. I saw that this year, voting is more important than ever. I think that it was as we marched, to get the call to speak at the event was just a mind-blowing opportunity. I never thought, and I told my group this, I never thought, once we left Wisconsin, I said, no one's gonna know who I am when we leave Milwaukee. Like, when we got to Kenosha and people were there, I was excited, like, wow, Kenosha is here to support us. And they walked us all the way to like the Illinois border, basically, to like Pleasant Prairie. And when we got to Illinois, I said, no one's gonna like know who we are or care that we're marching. There was like barely any media when we left Milwaukee. And to see all these people come out along the way and give us things, to give us water, to show us support, to see all these people like donate, to have us to be able to afford the rooms and the food and the gas, and to see this outpouring of individuals and to see the actual media pick it up, it was just amazing to see all that going on. When you think about you're just gonna walk across the country and you're a person, and I'm truly a humble individual, I never thought like this many people was even paying attention to me. So when you think you're just gonna walk across the country, Milwaukee's small. You just think people in Milwaukee support you. It was amazing to see how many people really, truly wanted to see us just make it there. Like, honestly, just wanted to see us just make it there. And then when we got the call about halfway there and they asked me to speak at the event, I was in tears. It was truly one of the greatest moments of my life. To be able to voice my opinion, to feel like my opinion mattered, to see that someone actually cared about how hard I was fighting, to get up every single day of your life as an activist and to say every morning, what can I do to help my people? What can I do to fight for a cause? To go and be unemployed for years, to go and not work a job for years, to literally figure out how to do side jobs, how to figure out how to do all these different things. It was rewarding to know that people care that you were fighting, to see for the first time that people truly cared across the country and to be fighting for so many years. For me, it was an iconic moment in my life. And to do it on the day that my best friend died, the day after my dad died, and to do it and represent the city of Milwaukee, and to do it and to bring light to the situation with Joseph Mensah for Alvin Cole, who was murdered by Joseph Mensah, for Jay Anderson and Antonio Gonzalez, who was murdered by Joseph Mensah, to actually bring light to the families, to Maria Hamilton, to fight for Dontre Hamilton, to fight for Seville Smith, to bring world attention to people in Milwaukee and our situation, was the greatest moment of my life. Only because I got a chance to bring light to the stories of the families that I've been fighting for that I never got justice for. I got one more chance to bring attention to their situations. And I think that anybody that's fighting for the cause, that anybody that ever wants to give up, that anybody that ever feels like we fighting for something that we won't get, I felt like my march was the time to show y'all that we never gonna stop this time. This is a demand for change. This is not a negotiation. This is a demand. This is something that we have to do. It's our only shot. If we don't come together, we got to stop the internal fighting. If we don't come together, this is literally our only shot at doing this. This is our only chance to see the kids that look up to me. The people don't understand. Yeah, we get negativity. We get flack. That's not my problem. My problem is when we don't work together for change. The police come together no matter what. They stick together no matter what. And we don't work together and put our differences to the side. If we can't have problems and put our differences to the side for people like George Floyd, then why are we out here? If we can't keep fighting until we get justice for people like Jay Anderson, for people like Alvin Cole, then why are we out here? We got to put our differences to the side and keep fighting. And we got to be strong across this country. So I wanted to organize. I wanted to make sure I organized individuals across this country. I wanted us to come together. I wanted to show that we could organize as African Americans, as white people, as LGBTQ people, as Hispanic people, as we can organize, because we all being prosecuted by the police at some point wrongly in this country. And I felt like while we marching and while we fighting and while we going through these issues with each other and while we going through these issues in this country, this is our biggest chance, and this is the difference right here, and this is our truly our only shot that we're gonna have for the next 30 years. And it's nothing we're gonna be able to do overnight. It's nothing that we're gonna be able to accomplish just from a march. I didn't feel like I accomplished anything when I got there, besides bringing light to those families, and besides like what I was going through spiritually. I didn't get justice. It wasn't the end for me, it was the beginning. And I appreciate every opportunity that I get now to travel the country and to talk to families and to talk to individuals. And when I got on the stage, even, I didn't prepare anything. It was funny because me, Tori Lowe, and Sandy all got up there, and they were like, only two of you can talk, not three of you. And then me and Tori were sitting there, and Sandy was like, "You often tell me I can't talk." We like, "No, we ain't gonna do that." And I told Tori he could go, and he's like, "No, this is your moment. You go ahead. You're gonna say what I would have said anyway." So they were like, "You got to share 2 minutes." And I'm like, well, I'm glad I didn't prepare like a speech. I was just glad for the opportunity to be up there. It was like 200 people that spoke. So I was like, nobody's going to care what I have to say. Anyway, there's no one's going to really care about what I have to say. But I just went up there and I spoke from the heart. And when I got off the stage, to see so many people that, like, I didn't even see anyone. Like, I didn't see anyone. I didn't see any hands. I didn't see anybody actually like in the crowd. I didn't see any reactions. It was just truly a spiritual moment where I like to tap into how I'm feeling at that moment and truly pour my heart out. And after I walked away from there and came down, and it was just so many things that God blessed me with the opportunity, as far as like even me being like supposed to have spoke, but got pushed back so many times that I end up being like one of the first or second speakers when they actually went live around the world. So before I spoke, they weren't live. They were just like letting people talk. So then to actually be accidentally, they didn't care who I was, to accidentally be pushed back into where everyone got to see it. And so when I came off of there and everyone reacted and the media wanted to talk to me and know who I was, and then CSNBC right after that, then Showtime. And every time I talk about Milwaukee and I just talk about what we got going on, and such a great movement, such a great city with great people that's fighting for such a great cause, it's just truly a moving experience. And I didn't know when I first left what I was going to see. I didn't know what we were going to embark on. But there was a lot of things going on spiritually where I got a lot of foresight, where I was able to talk to the people, where I was able to say this is going to happen, and it happened, where I was able to voice certain things. And there was a lot of cities that I went through where the police told us we couldn't march, we couldn't go, we had to stop. And I truly didn't know like what would happen, but I knew that no matter what, I wasn't going to stop. And that's pretty much my message to the world. No matter what, we can't stop. We have to keep pushing through. We have to keep pushing through, because when you're on the side of right, when you're on the side of justice, when you're on the side of equality, no matter what, you just got to keep pushing through. Eventually you'll get it. You'll get it. And I appreciate, like I said, everything that you guys have done for me. I appreciate this opportunity to talk about healing justice. I hope I didn't get off topic or did not deliver what you guys didn't want. It's very difficult for me as a new keynote speaker, as an individual that speaks about other things. It's easier for me to talk about like George Floyd, or talk about justice, or talk about Breonna Taylor, or talk about things like that. But when I talk about myself, it's a difficult thing for me to do. I don't like talking about myself. I really like to talk about more of the inspiration. The people inspire me. I'm a giver. I'm inspired by pouring into people. And I hope that with opportunities like this and more opportunities I have in the future, that I can inspire someone at home and I can pour into them. And I think, like I said, for me, the most powerful thing for us as activists and things that we have to remember as adults is that the kids see everything that we're doing. The kids are always watching. Every little joke we make, every little thing that we say about each other, every little thing that we believe or don't believe, the kids are watching and they look up to us. For the first time in my life, I looked up to Pac and Biggie. You know what I mean? I looked up to Pac and Biggie. Kids look up to gangster rappers, to gangbangers, to drug dealers, to athletes. For the first time in people's life, I know for me, this ain't never happened for me, but people tell me they kids look up to me. And that's different. People tell me they kids look up to me on a consistent basis. Kids are looking up to us as leaders in our community, as activists for the first time ever. If you don't believe in nothing I do, if you don't believe in nothing I stand for, if you don't believe in what I'm fighting for, if you believe whatever you want to believe about me or any other activists in the community, just remember that the kids don't see that stuff. They look at us as symbols for change, and they growing up looking at us as symbols for change, and that's going to change these young people's life. When you trying to tear us down, and if you tear us down, they're going to go back to looking up to drug dealers. And y'all don't say nothing about that. They're going to go back to looking up to gangster rappers, athletes that don't do nothing for Black people. They're going to go back to looking up to these individuals, because the individuals that y'all look up to have small problems that anybody else in the world can have, no matter what their profession is. Y'all don't tear them down for nothing they do. Nobody ever tears down anything that some of these individuals that are in office do. They allowed to do whatever they want, but when you're a Black leader, you can't do anything. People will try to destroy you, and we have to stop doing that, because the next generation is growing up to be activists. They growing up to be leaders. They growing up to be like you. They growing up to be like me. They growing up to be like everybody that they see. They growing up, and as y'all watch our live videos, as y'all put them onto activism, as y'all show them different activists and they different styles, they're gonna create their style of their own. And if you show them that, you know what, everybody's not perfect, but look at the work that they do. Look at what they're trying to do in the community. Support their work, not the individual. Support the work they're doing. Look at the work that they do. Look at what they're trying to accomplish in a world where nobody else is trying to accomplish that. Because every time y'all try to tear one down, all you doing is making it hard for the next individual. He gonna say, I don't want to be an activist. Look what they did to Frank Nitty. Look what they did to Vaughn. Look what they did to Khalil. You know what I mean? I don't want to be an activist. Forget it. I don't want to be. That's what they're going to do. And we don't need that. We need our community leaders to be uplifted. We need this to be a lane of the most forgiveness. We need this to be a lane where people can say, you know what, that's okay. We're going to work with you as a leader, and you a representation of a community that's been hurting. I mean, it ain't like I don't come from the community that was hurting. So how can I not be hurting as I try to fight for it? You know what I mean? As I try to fight this fight, how can I be perfect when I'm built from the same community that I'm saying that we need to change in order to have better stuff? I went to the same schools as y'all. I grew up in the same poverty as y'all. You know what I mean? I was around the same individuals as y'all growing up. So when you look at that, I'm a product of the same environment as everybody else. I'm just choosing to take my life and fight for change, whether I'm messed up, whether I got problems, whether I got issues, whether I'm imperfect or not. I'm just trying to use my life, my actual time on this earth, to fight for change, even if I don't even acquire it before I die. That's what I choose to do with my life. And I think that I hope that inspires other people. And my goal is to be transparent as I can with my inspiration, and the hope that I can reach individuals, and the hope that I have more opportunities like this and to work with the Greater Milwaukee Foundation more in the future. I think I'm out of time, maybe. I'm not sure. But I know I'm around 25 minutes. I don't know. I don't want to, you know what I'm saying? If y'all say keep going, or I'm out of time, or what, keep going. Okay. So I'm sorry about that, y'all, that little moment of break. But so, and then I appreciate you giving me more time, because then that means that I'm saying something that you guys appreciate at the Greater Milwaukee Foundation. But I just want people to know, like, man, it's very hard to fight the police, fight racism, fight injustice, fight African Americans that don't believe in what you're doing, fight internally with individuals that don't believe what you're doing, fight with other activists, and then still have the mindset and the heart for change while you still in poverty, while you still trying to figure out how to pay your bills, while you still trying to figure out how to help people with money while you're not getting any funding or government help. When you have individuals that are truly doing all of that, try your best to support them, try your best to uplift them, try your best to be behind them in what they're doing. Because at the end of the day, they represent families, not themselves. They represent families that's out here hurting, and they represent families that need change. Whether you believe in them or not, somebody else believes in them, and they're going to ask them for help. And when you discourage other people to help them, then they're not able to help the people that's asking for help. That's what literally happens. People ask for help in the community, and it's difficult for a community activist that's helping people to get help if people are trying to tear those activists down. I think Milwaukee, what I found also was that we have to learn laws. We have to learn we have to learn laws. We have to learn our laws. A lot of times the police, we are being policed by a police force that don't even know the law. Like when you think about that, it sounds crazy. We're literally being policed by a police force that don't even know the law. A lot of them guess the law. A lot of them interpret the law differently. A lot of them are like on opposite sides of one situation when it comes to law. When we were marching, I marched through on Highway 30 and there was construction. And the Valparaiso sheriff marched down the street with me on a one lane where there was construction. I got to the next county and it was 2 lanes and no construction. And the police arrested me for marching down the exact same road that the last police county said. You know what I mean? Like their interpretation is always different. So a lot of times they'll impose laws on us that aren't even real, or they'll impose things on us that we don't even know. So we comply to that without knowing. And I walked through a lot of communities and I marched through a lot of communities where they were like, they won't let us march over here, or they won't let us do that. And then I marched down the exact same street they were told they couldn't march down. And they never tried. Like once the police told them you can't do this, they were like, okay, I guess we can't do this, instead of actually knowing what the law was. I think as Black people, we need to know our laws and know our rights, and so that we can exercise them correctly. And it goes on the reverse side too. We have to know how to protest and how to peacefully protest. For me, you have to separate the two. For me, I've always been like, don't come to my protest and throw a rock, don't throw a brick, don't agitate the police. We don't do none of that when I protest. I'm not into that. If you want to do that with somebody else, that's on y'all. That ain't got nothing to do with me. But when you do a peaceful protest, we got to make sure that those things aren't a part of the peaceful protest. We got to make sure we're not agitating the police. We got to make sure that we demonstrating in a certain manner so that they can have no excuse. That's the whole reason when I marched, we didn't say anything. There was no excuse for the racism. There was no excuse for what the people were doing to us. When you peacefully marching, there's no excuse for what they do. When somebody throw a rock from the back, that gives them an excuse to do everything that they do. So being able to go around the country and to talk to the different groups, and how to peacefully protest, how to exercise their right, how to push through without, you can push through without fighting the police. You can exercise your right without aggressively fighting the police. If you aggressively try to fight the police, a lot of times it's not going to end out well for you. You know what I mean? And we not equipped a lot of times. We got women out there. We got kids out there. You got to know your audience. We have people out there, and we not equipped with the type of individuals that you should be trying to even engage with the police like that at a peaceful protest. That's why it's very important for us to remain peaceful when we protest, and to learn how to come up with some sort of curriculum across the country that we can use so that we can have a system that works for us. And thank y'all for your time.
Thank you, Frank. Thank you for your vulnerability. Thank you for sharing with us the struggles, the challenges that you face, but also at the same time, how you've overcome that. I think one thing people forget about leaders, especially in this time, is just how vulnerable leaders have to be in this moment. And I think today and this morning, you just showed us your courage. You showed us your strength. And I think you've shown people another side to you that maybe they weren't aware of before. And that's what this moment is about. That's what On the Table is about. It's about bringing different voices so that we can get to know each other, so that we can understand and lead together in this movement, because it is going to take all of us to do it. And so you shared a couple key points, and there's some questions that we have from the audience as well here. As far as working with allies, you talked about how your marches included people of all races, colors, ethnicities, background, etc. I just want you to talk a little bit about what white allies can specifically do to help create real change, and what would you recommend that they should focus on? What policy should they focus on to create that change?
I feel like, honestly, this is one of my favorite questions. Not that it gets asked a lot, but there's a few things white people can do. One, educating other white people. White people can educate other white people on what's really going on in the Black Lives Matter movement. 93% of Black Lives Matter protests are peaceful. They can educate them on what we're really trying to accomplish instead of the narrative that's being painted out there. I think as far as like legislative changes, for me, one of the ideas I do like is violence interrupters. I think that we should have violence interrupters, individuals that aren't the police or someone that can tag along with the police to actually monitor them and tell them right there on the spot that they're not doing, what they're supposed to be doing. I think that as far as like voting is concerned and going into rooms where African Americans either are ignored, don't have a voice, they don't care what we're saying, or we're not invited. There's a lot of rooms that white people get into that are not the rooms that we get into. For example, before the protests, Black people knew who I was in Milwaukee. I think after the marches, white people knew who I was. And that's what really pretty much changed a lot of what was going on. And I think that my favorite thing that I tell all white people that they can do as allies is every white person knows someone racist. Every single white person knows a racist person in their family, most likely. It's a dad, it's a spouse, it's a brother, it's a cousin, it's a sister, it's a coworker, it's a business owner. They all know racist white people. And for years, forever, they've allowed these white people to be racist. Even after the 60s when segregation ended, they'll allow them to make racist jokes, and they might be like, dad, or don't make that joke, or they might say something, but they don't alienate those individuals. They don't isolate those individuals. They don't punish those individuals for the racism that they have. They don't say anything to them. If you're a white ally and you have a dad that's racist, you should be telling your dad that that's not cool. You should be pressing your dad about it. You should be educating your dad. You should be not dealing with your dad. You should be not dealing with anybody that's racist. You shouldn't, if you have another business owner that you do business with, that you buy 1,000 pieces of this from them or 2,000 of these a week and they're racist and you know they're racist, then you shouldn't be, am I frozen? Okay, I'm sorry. Was I frozen? Okay, cool. You shouldn't be, if you buy, you shouldn't be doing business with this person. White people do business with racist white people and they ignore the racism. They sit and eat dinner with racist white people and they ignore the racism. The most powerful thing a white ally can do for me is to cut off those racist individuals, to cut off those individuals that are racist, that you know is racist. Cut those individuals out your life, cut those individuals out your business, make them have to change. They can be racist at home, but make them have to respect you as an ally and all Black people. And as long as they can sit inside a little house in a little bubble and be racist and let the racism die with them, you can't do nothing about that. But for me, that's what I ask my white allies to do. The racist people in your life, address them, confront them, and make them change.
Thank you. So a few other questions that came up specifically had to do with just your leadership style and the way that you've navigated being an activist in Milwaukee. But in your speech, you talked a little bit about how leaders and new leaders need the grace from the rest of the community in leadership, because a lot of the times folks are stepping into roles that they didn't necessarily prepare for, but they were called into this moment. They rose into this moment and met the moment. And you're an example of one of those leaders. And so talk a little bit about how you deal with some of that criticism that comes your way, whether it's true or false. How do you navigate that? And what advice would you give to other leaders who want to become involved in the movement, but are fearful of the backlash that they might receive from their community based on their leadership style?
I think that as far as me, like sometimes I address things. For the most part, I don't address things unless they get so out of control that people just believe whatever they hear. So I address things. So like somebody saying I had $1 billion in my Cash App or something like that. Like I thought no one would ever believe anything like that. So I had to address it. But like, I think for the most part, like when it comes to like my style, I'm never dare to be yourself. If you're going to do anything, make sure that you be yourself. The thing that I think that like for me that differs like and I'm not trying to say this like I'm LeBron James or Martin Luther King, but like with LeBron James, like they're always comparing him to Michael Jordan. For me, I wish he would just be like, man, I'm just LeBron James, you know what I mean? Because just be yourself. And that's pretty much me. I didn't get in, I always tell people I didn't get in this to be like the next Al Sharpton, as much as I love him. I got in this to be the next Martin Luther King. Like I wanted to be the greatest ever. And when I say that, it wasn't to be like greater than him. It was because Martin Luther King and Malcolm X dedicated their lives to change. So for me, I want us to do everything I could to dedicate my life to change in 2020 and whatever that looks like. And, you know, I'm inspired by them and trying to be as great as them. I didn't come out here to play. I didn't come out here to half step. I didn't come out here to be afraid. So for me, I try whatever I think is going to be effective and I put it to work. And I don't worry about the criticism for the most part. The other reality is social media. You have social media and then you have like real world reality. Social media is a place where anybody can say anything and they can repeat what they say and they can run around and say it on everything that you own and every time that you talk and every time somebody bring you up. But then in person, nobody ever say nothing to you. So I'm saying, so when I walk around Milwaukee, the love that I get in person outweighs all the hate that I've ever seen on social media. So trust me, even though you see a lot of criticism, even though you see a lot of hate, it can never like to have a little girl give me a hat, 7 years old, say she spent her own allowance on it, or a little kid give me a necklace or a bracelet or make me a shirt. The stuff they say on social media never could destroy that. The adults are the ones that are the ugliness of the world. The kids aren't going to do that. Kids are going to love you. They're going to support you. They're going to believe in what you're fighting for. And so are your supporters, the parents of those kids too. So for me, just go ahead and make sure that you fight, do it your way, and don't let the hate discourage you. If you're getting the haters, that means you're doing something right. You know what I'm saying? Otherwise, nobody, you know what I'm saying? I always tell people, nobody likes the guy that everybody likes. It's always going to be somebody be like, I just don't like him. Like, why? Because why do everybody like him? You know what I mean? It's no matter what, everybody going to have a hater. That's the most transparent way I can say that.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I also do want to say that there are a lot of comments in the comment section just thanking you for your leadership. And you are definitely very much appreciated in our community. And we want you to know that. We want you to know that the work that you're doing is valuable, is important, is moving the needle. And nonetheless, I think the energy that you are bringing to Milwaukee and how you are representing Milwaukee is just amazing. And so thank you so much for sharing your time. And at this moment, I'd like to introduce the other panel of speakers that we have for you today. And so right now we have with us Representative Kaylin Haywood, we have Representative David Bowen, and we also have Miss Tiffany Henry from the Milwaukee Urban League Young Professionals. So how is everyone doing? Let me start with Tiffany. Tiffany, I know you are out of state right now in Rochester, Minnesota, still doing the work. And so talk to us a little bit about how you are doing.
I'm doing good. A couple of days ago, if you asked me that question, I probably would have been very transparent with you, very honest that I was not doing good. And to say that is to say that, everything that's been going on and to be on the front lines of this movement, of this cause, it does take a toll on your physical and it takes a toll on your mental. And so, having to acknowledge that, and knowing that, you're in the fight and trying to carry a lot of different, roles and identify your lane and be good in that lane while also paying respect to the issue at hand. But I'm a fighter, I'm a warrior, so I'm going to continue. I have a commitment and I'm invested in this. And so that's what continues me to say that I'm going to keep going. Because I know it's bigger than me and it's bigger than all of us that are sitting on this panel and those who are listening and watching this. So I wanted to say thank you to, the Greater Milwaukee Foundation for even taking the time to acknowledge this issue and want to have a real talk conversation about it. And likewise to thank the panelists who have joined today.
Thank you. And like Tiffany mentioned, and to just give more context to this conversation, healing justice, again, is about centering the well-being of the people in the community who have been affected by COVID, by the murders that have been going on against Black and Brown lives. And we recognize at the foundation that there have been individuals who have been at the forefront of this movement. If you take a look around and just see who has been out here really making sure that our voices are heard, the individuals that you see on the screen today are people that have been fighting for all lives, and have been fighting specifically for Black and Brown lives. And so this moment right now, as Tiffany said, is to raise this conversation for us to start to have a real conversation about what is happening in Milwaukee and what it takes to really change this narrative. And so with that being said, Mr. David Bowen, Representative David Bowen, please share how you're doing with us and talk a little bit about what you've been doing in the last few months.
First off, Anita, thank you so much for having me on. And I hope my signal is pretty good here so you can hear me clearly. First off, to the amazing panelists on to join us today, I'm honored to be a part and just continue this conversation. Much of my opportunity to be out there has been because of several things. One, the state legislature has sat on their hands, and we're not in session right now. And I'm also not being challenged for my seat. So I have a little bit of time on my hands, and I've invested that time into the movement and to making sure that I could protect people's right to protest. So I've been out there, and a number of my colleagues on the local level, at the state level, have been out there as well. So really big shouts out to them. Everybody is doing all that they can to make sure that they allow this movement to make the impact that it's going to have on this generation and future generations as well. How am I doing? For the last 72 hours, a little bit before the weekend, we've seen some really aggressive tactics, illegal aggressive tactics by the Wauwatosa Police Department, led by Chief Weber and co-signed by Mayor McBride, unfortunately. I've witnessed folks be illegally attempted to be snatched off the streets, threatened with arrest, threatened with being hurt by riot using mechanisms, tear gas, rubber bullets, a number of other tactics, and even witnessing and seeing reports of family members that have been lost to the Wauwatosa Police Department's own officers, and to see what has happened to the Cole family has just been, it's been horrendous. It really is a struggle for me to be able to try to keep decorum or try to keep composure when everything that the system has is just showing how stubborn it is to actually change, how stubborn it is to actually accepting the fact that we are on track to make some substantial, really big changes in public safety and law enforcement accountability. And they're fighting with tooth and nail to be able to keep things the way that they are. And they know that the status quo benefits white people. They know that the status quo benefits officers that do not want to be held accountable to the Black community. So, it's not that I don't expect that opposition. It's just the difference of seeing, especially really young people in this movement, being treated as if they are hardened, big time criminals and using police tactics that are, very destructive on their bodies and on their lives. So we're in this fight. We are definitely in this fight. And I just want to give a really big shout out to all the people that have been on the front lines, not just this weekend, but we're going years back, back to when I was a community organizer. Trayvon Martin was killed, and that impacted us and a number of us that were out in the movement at that time. And then we've seen Rekia Boyd, then we've seen Dontre Hamilton when I was running for state assembly. We've seen Eric Gardner. We've seen a number of just hashtag and name in our own cases right here in Wisconsin. And this is just, it's gotten to the point where I totally agree with Frank. There's a generation right now, there's a movement right now that is not going to stop until justice is given to these families, that the system is finally held accountable and rebuilt on a foundation of being accountable to Black communities.
Thank you so much. And you mentioned young people, and as I introduce Representative Haywood and give him a chance to speak, I just want to highlight that for those who don't know, Representative Kaylin Haywood was elected as one of the youngest legislatures in the country. And so when we talk about young people leading, I just want us to really celebrate and congratulate somebody here right in our own community who is doing the work. And so Representative Haywood, please talk about what this journey has been like for you as a young Black man in Milwaukee, but not your regular average young Black man. No, you are a legislator, a representative, and you have people that you are leading. Talk about how this journey has been for you. How are you doing? How are you navigating this role during this time?
All right, good afternoon, everybody. Anita, thank you for having me and thanks for your comments. Thanks to the foundation, the panelists. I'm looking forward to talking to you all. And I have to just say, Frank, I appreciate you, brother. That was a super dope keynote. And I think not only for me, but I think people needed to hear that from you. Because I think too often we let the media and what social media is saying, we don't hear directly from the horse. We heard that from the horse's mouth. So thanks, Frank. I appreciate you. And when we talk about how we're doing, as I'm doing, how we doing as a community, 2020 has been a really, really, really rough year. It's like every day there's something new going on, something happening socially with our families, health-wise. We're going through a health pandemic, we're going through an economic crisis, but we're also going through a resurgence of the social justice movement, especially here in Milwaukee. But for me, I think that with all the craziness that happened this year, I'll say I'm doing okay. Most of my family is doing healthy, is healthy. My grandmother is recovering from COVID in the hospital right now, but she's hopefully getting better. So we're staying positive. But also, I think with all the craziness, I always want to find a positive. And I think the positive of 2020 is that with all that craziness, people are getting engaged. I think a problem we had before is that people weren't getting engaged. Stuff was just happening. Folks weren't watching the news. Folks weren't going to go vote. Folks weren't educating themselves on what was happening. So I think right now what we have is folks are getting engaged, young, old, Black, white, it doesn't matter, folks are getting engaged. And even like our friend pointed out, that young people are looking up to activists now. They want to see stuff change. I talk about the issues and why I ran. Because of what we're going through now is a huge part of the reason why I ran for office in the first place. Being young, I saw the things we were talking about, and they hadn't changed over time. The conversation kind of changed, but there was no real actual change. And generations before me have fought, and they have built the foundation and the stepping stones that we're on now. And I think it's up to my generation, Gen Z, to make sure that we are the last generation that has to deal with these issues, making sure that the change actually comes now. Because I hear Frank say it a lot too, but our kids shouldn't have to march and fight for the same things we're marching and fighting for now. So I'm doing okay, but I am glad to see that everybody's starting to get engaged, starting to educate themselves. They're holding their electeds accountable, but they also are holding each other accountable. So I'm doing okay. I'm looking forward to seeing what all this brings, and looking forward to the conversation.
Thank you. So one of our the things that we focus at the foundation and we're moving into is really being bold about what racial equity and inclusion means. And with that comes a ton of conversations. And so Frank, Tiffany, David, and Kaylin, I just want you to share from your perspective, while everyone isn't necessarily called to lead and be at the front of these movements and to be an activist, what other ways can we stand up for racial equity and inclusion? What other ways, and specifically, what work are you doing? And I'll start with you, Tiffany, as you are president of the Milwaukee Urban League Young Professionals. That is just one way that you are giving back to the community, as well as protesting and being in the streets. And so talk a little bit about how and what you've decided to do during this time to start to break down these systemic challenges and barriers that we have.
Well, I think that's a good question. I think, we've had this ongoing conversation and highlighting the fact that we're in the midst of two pandemics. People say multiple pandemics. And I think this year, COVID has really exposed a lot that we already knew as Black Americans, as those of us who live and reside in the city of Milwaukee and the surrounding areas. But I think now it has really just told us to hone in and to really take this moment seriously, because of the fact that we know the inequities, we know what's being faced, what we're up against. But now we're at a point in time where we actually have to do something about it. The world, the community has been on pause, has been on stop. And to say that we have to fix this. So I've identified my lane where I've always wanted to find a way where I was engaged some type of way intimately with folks to be able to, really be connected and figure out how to actually see some impact and make some change that we want to see. And to do it within a time frame where I can at least feel something, but then most importantly, the folks coming behind me will really see it and they'll really feel it. But then also they'll be able to take that mantle on for themselves and then be able to identify what space they want to be in and then how to be able to work it for themselves. So I think, representing at least 200 plus young professionals, Black young professionals in the city of Milwaukee who work in all different types of spaces, being able to have conversation with them and to be able to figure out, like, what does that even look like in what we consider as young professional world. All of us are working in, whether it's nonprofit, government, education, corporate, but identifying what does that really mean? How are we showing up? And furthermore, how are those in position of power, how are they showing up to us? How are they creating spaces of equity? People talk about equality all the time, but how are they talking about really moving the needle on equity and making sure that it's fair and balanced for all of us to be able to be in these different environments? And so work culture is very important. Being able to have people in spaces and leadership positions, not just to fill a D&I role or to say that we filled that spot, but to really say we are taking value in what Anita is saying. We're taking value in what Kaylin is saying. We're taking value in what Frank is bringing to the table, and actually listening and then implementing these things. I can't ever think of being in a role and not saying to myself, how is this organization, corporation, business, how is it actually listening and adhering to the things that is on the street, but also what's being put in the boardroom or what's being in the break room? And so, I'm honored, but at the same time, I know that there's more work to do, and I'm one person. But I represent a whole lot of people who share the same concept, who share the same value, who share the same mission. My connection or then transition to them being involved with the movement, with the revolution, was saying to myself, I had to have a more direct way of lending my voice, of using my sphere of influence and making sure that not only am I represented in this, but the people who I represent as an organization, that they see that their leader is willing to sacrifice. So literally on Thursday, I was arrested by a police department that has systemic issues, and trying to make sure that those systemic issues are brought to the table, and letting it be known that enough is enough. Also letting it be known that what's happening in this community, in this city, in this state is inappropriate, for lack of a better word, for the type of excessive force and the action and the anger and the frustration to be exerted onto people who are mainly just want to exist. If that's how we wanted to put it, just mainly want to exist, and ensuring that our existence isn't a threat. That it isn't a threat that when we walk into a store or when we walk into an organization, we go to a table, that we're able, or even when we're driving in our car, or we're asleep in our car, or we're going to work, live, and play, that our existence matters. And so there's a threat, there's a resistance to that. That resistance is also found in work culture, in workspaces. It's just hidden and done differently. You feel me? It's just done in a different way. And so, that's how I want to be able to connect the two. And that once we identify and once we are able to find some type of resolve when we're talking about police accountability, that we can then move on and bring up the issues that we are seeing all across the board. Because I don't want people to walk away and think that this is just about holding police accountable. It's not just that. It's more to it than to that. So, you know, I'm honored I'm able to be able to connect these two spaces that I love. And I'm, you know, hoping and praying continuously that we're able to see the change that we want to see.
Thank you, Tiffany. And David, I know specifically that you have had to deal with personal issues pertaining to the pandemic. And so talk about how your leadership role has evolved after personally facing the challenges that have come with the pandemic. How has that shaped your leadership role? How has that affected the policies that you're working on? And I would also offer that same question to you, Kaylin, as well. What type of legislation, what type of action items and agendas are you working on right now in this moment?
Yeah, you know, a lot of people back in February recognized, since I went public and announced that I contracted the coronavirus, I was like one of the first faces that people knew to put a face to a name, that the virus actually was real. And there was so much misinformation going around the country and around our community of the impact and the effect that it could have, the detrimental effect that it could have on families, on our economy, on the human body, that a lot of stuff went on the radar. So that was really at the time where we were realizing that not only was this virus a real thing after I think the president claimed it was a hoax by the media, but literally it was starting to wreak havoc. And the first 13 deaths in Milwaukee County were all Black folks. And really recognizing how, you know, it's one thing to try to get a community recession proof and to make sure that they can sustain themselves if the economy takes a hit. How do you even prepare a community to be pandemic proof? And a community that already, as Tiffany Henry is saying, already dealing with a pandemic. So, you know, it's important for me to put things in context. And one of my mentors, Leonard Wells, he served in the Milwaukee Police Department for 20 plus years, retired, went on to be a radio host and a professor as well. He was a big proponent of police reform and law enforcement accountability. And he has dedicated his life to that. He died of COVID around that same time. And to be impacted by his life and to take the same fight that, you know, that he led on, that he instilled in me, and to continue that as the whole country got sparked to, and the world got sparked to challenge after George Floyd's death, Ahmaud Arbery's death, and Breonna Taylor's killing, that you have the chance for us to make substantial change. And what has shifted my perspective is that we can't afford to just be nice anymore. And Wisconsin nice allows folks in our state and in the political discourse to smile while they're screwing over your community at the same time, while they don't acknowledge that the disparities that are out there are being fueled because inaction is allowing them to exist, right? And it's putting us in a worse position to be able to fix these really big challenges that are affecting the folks in our community. So we just can't afford to be nice about it anymore. I have Republican colleagues that have sat on their hands on basic bills that could shift accountability and save lives, and to use the best practices that police departments should be using all across the state of Wisconsin, and in line with if we had a countrywide approach to have approaches across the country that could make sure that people not only survive police encounters, especially if they are Black, but ensuring that they get a chance to thrive in their communities as well. If we're going to address inequity, that means that the folks that grew up and live in 53206 need more resources and a real substantial plan to deal with the mass investment that we've made in incarceration, rather than actually investing into the neighborhoods and the economy where that neighborhood is, where that zip code is. And using an approach where the state is saying that they're going to be a partner and they're going to invest more money. The city is saying they're going to be a partner, they're going to invest more money. And we actually can address these disparities with a multi-pronged approach. But if we're just going to be nice about it, we'll allow ourselves, just like in 2016, after Seville Smith's death and killing in Sherman Park, everybody got mad and made promises that this was the chance for us to do something bigger and to make some changes. And everybody got back comfortable. And literally it just became, the go back to the normal. But, right now in this moment, people are advocating for a new normal. And that's exactly what we have to attain. And that's exactly what my leadership style has shifted to, that we have to demand the really big, bold changes that we're afraid to take on.
Thank you. And I'll shift the conversation a little bit as I ask you, Kaylin, this question about how has social media influenced your role as a leader? Has it become more of a disruptor in your opinion? Is it being used for a greater cause? What ways have you been able to use social media, navigate social media as a tool rather than a hindrance?
To answer both questions, I'm assuming, leadership style had to change because we set out in office, you have your platform, you have your ideas and your goals on what you want to do. When you look at 2020, you cannot ignore what the people want, what the people are demanding, and the urgency that's needed. So, we want to do great work, but I think for too often, I think Representative Bowen made a great comment. We've been being nice about it because we want to be nice. We want to make sure we can get work done. We want to keep those good relationships. But being nice about it has resulted in us getting the breadcrumbs. And that hasn't been enough, and it's not going to be enough. We need to go for the whole loaf. And I think that's where it's shifted now, that even though Representative Bone and I both have colleagues on the side of the aisle, and we're trying to maintain those relationships, we've been having to have those hard conversations this year and be brutally honest about what's currently going on, the current climate of things, but also what we need. And it's been rough. We've had some, Representative Bone and I have been in the same room together having some of these conversations with our colleagues. It is a challenge to get them to understand where we are coming from, what we're demanding, and why we need it. So shifting it, we had to have those hard conversations, but also making sure we talk about going back in the session in January. We have to demand that we're going to have change. When we talk about Black Lives Matter, and a lot of people around the country, especially before this summer, saw it just a hashtag. And it's much bigger than just a hashtag. It's about equality. It's about making sure that we get rid of those disparities. And people think about Black Lives Matter. It's about police reform. It's about holding police officers accountable and making sure that we protect Black lives. But it's also about making sure Black lives matter when it comes to housing. Make sure that Black people have access to home ownership. Right now, Black home ownership is at 27%. We got to get that number up. It is way too low. Making sure that Black lives matter when it comes to the workforce, making sure that Black people are able to get jobs. I was in a really dynamic district. I have everything from downtown Milwaukee to Capitol Drive, and then from Humboldt Avenue to 35th Street. So super diverse. I got downtown in Marquette, while it's going on with 5 to 4 and 3rd Street. But on the north end, also have 5 to 206, which has been starved of resources, support, love, and care for a very long time. And we got to get them we got to get the entire district what we need. It shouldn't be, I talk about being a tale of two cities within a 15-minute drive. It's like you're in a completely different space. So understanding that we make sure that some of my residents, they work 2-3 jobs to make ends meet. They aren't working those jobs to save up for a new house or a new car, literally to make ends meet. And if something crazy happens, one minor unexpected expense happens, they're in financial ruins all of a sudden. So we gotta make sure that those residents, my constituents have the opportunity to have those good paying family sustaining jobs. Making sure that our kids are teaching make sure our schools are teaching our kids to not be the best resume builder and build the best resume application, but how do you become an entrepreneur? How to become a CEO, how to become a lawyer, a doctor, how do you become an activist? I think it's important that we train them, we teach our next generation the things they really need to know and making them be leaders, and train them to be leaders and give them that opportunity and that support. So how it shifted legislatively is we got to make sure that when we bounce back from COVID, both economically and health-wise. Also, we really, really demand social justice. We take what the activists and what the people on the ground who are hitting the pavement are saying and calling for and demanding and asking for, and we team up with them and make sure that their voices are being heard in the legislature, and make sure that the policies we pass reflect what we're hearing on the ground. I think that's what's so important, and I think that for all my colleagues, even the ones that may get on Twitter and on social media and deny what's happening or deny what's being said, they hear it, they know what's happening. And I think social media is so powerful because what we do in Milwaukee, we know we're doing. I was doing doors yesterday, and there was a protest going down 6th Street in my district. And so we see it, we live it, we hear it happen. Pictures and those videos and those images and share those throughout the entire state. So for the folks who are 8 hours up north in rural Wisconsin that are not going to see that parade on 6th Street, other than on social media, they can now see that. Because I talk to people all the time about how they should call their elected officials when they are against something, but also for something. But I'm like, we're on the same team. We got to make sure we're calling or bringing to the attention what's going on to my other colleagues up north in rural areas, about bringing to the constituent awareness about what's going on and make them demand change too. We got to have all hands on deck. And so I think that's what this year is about. People are getting active, people are making demands. And I want to see moving into 2021, back in the session, I want to see the people who are on the ground. I want to see y'all in Madison with me too. We got to fight this fight together. Whether it's phone calls, whether it's emails, I take those emails to committee with me. If it's a stack of emails, I show that. But I want to make sure that they hear your voices, they see you, they know it's not just me and Representative Bone up there saying the same thing. It's everybody. It's what the people want. So I think it's shifted us about what we're going to demand and how we're going to approach it and what we're going to accept going into the next session.
Thank you. And I actually want to turn it back to Frank as well at this time and hear his thoughts on a couple of things, as well as you all's thoughts and opinions. But as mentioned before, I think there's this notion that leaders have to have it all together in order to lead, that leaders must be perfect, that we must come in this perfectly wrapped gift and be presented in this specific way. But as we all know, we're all different. Even as Black people, we are not monolithic at all. And so we all have different styles. And so as we talk about leadership, how, Frank, are you addressing some of the concerns that you've had from the community? How are you navigating that? And I guess for everyone as well, because I know that there's times that individuals may have not had the most friendly feelings about you and the work that you do, but talk a little bit about how you handle that and ways in which that as a community we can come together, specifically in Milwaukee, as we're known to be in so many silos, working on so many different projects. How can we start to put those differences aside and really focus, as you all are talking about, this moment that we have in front of us, this moment that we have to demand change, this moment that we have to come together? How do we clearly start to align and focus our interests on that? And so I'll start with you, Frank, if you want to lead that answer.
I feel like we have to pay attention to our actual victories. When you think about the leaders and you talk about I think a lot more people are leaders than that know it. So when Tiffany gave such a great answer, when you were talking about in the community, people, what can they do? A lot of leaders are politicians. A lot of leaders are individuals that can hold people accountable. So I think a lot of people in the community lead in a different way. You don't always have to be the face. You don't always have to take all the hits. So I think a lot of the leaders that are actually in the forefront, they know they're going to take a lot of hits. Like when I marched across the country with my group, I was like, whatever y'all do, I'm going to be held responsible for it. Like every little thing that happens, I'm going to get blamed for it. You know what I mean? So for somebody said that they didn't eat on a trip one time, on Facebook, whatever. Well, it was a person in charge of food, but it was my fault they didn't eat. You know what I mean? So it's so much stuff that happens, and it's too much to concentrate on. For me, I don't concentrate on the negativity. I don't concentrate on the things that are said to tear me down. I don't respond to most of those things unless it's a serious allegation that's going to affect a lot of people that are around me. And I'm forced to. And mainly, as a leader, I concentrate on the problem and the goals. For me, like I said, I try to preach the message as much as I can to put our difference to the side. For me, it looks like organization. For me, it looks like us coming together and saying that there's something more important than all of our egos. There's something more important than all of our coalition. There's something more important than all of our groups, and that's change. For me, as I go around the country, I tell people all the time, like, why is there so many groups fighting for the same thing? You know what I mean? You can have 5 groups fighting for the same thing. We're all walking around saying justice for George Floyd, fighting to defund the police, fighting for body cams, but we're marching separately. So a lot of the times it's just pretty much coming to a common place, an organizational structure where no one gets swallowed. No one wants to be forgotten. You know what I mean? No one wants to be pushed to the side. No one wants to have a goal or a dream and to feel inadequate or to feel like what they're trying to do is not important. So we have to come to a place where we respect each other, where we give each other lanes, where we learn how to respect each other's lanes, where we learn how to share the space, where we learn how to support each other, and that we continue to fight for this change. We just pretty much gotta, I think, just share the space. Like if you have a group and I have a group and we want to march, we don't got to march at the same time. Every time that we march, we can defer to each other. Okay, we're going to go support this group that's marching. Okay, we're going to go support that group that's marching. It can be a back and forth if we share the space, and we can uplift each other. We can support each other financially. If one group's getting more than another group, we should be able to tie into each other and invest back into each other. This is a movement across the board. If someone donates, like a lot of times, I don't know if people knew this, or I'm not saying this to say this, but there's a lot of things I paid for in Milwaukee that I contributed to. The defund the police mural downtown, a lot of events that I contributed to, a lot of individuals' financial situations that were inside of other groups that I contributed to, because it wasn't about just supporting my specific group of people. It's about supporting all Black people. If you see Black people fighting for a cause, if you see there's a group fighting for a cause, if we try to love and support each other, we go back to just loving each other and supporting each other. All Black lives matter. And that's the whole point. Even the ones you don't like, even the Black activists you don't support, his Black life matters too. And that's the overall goal, getting back to where our minds focused on. Is any of this worse than what white people doing to us? Is any of this worse than what the police doing to us? Is any of this worse than the laws? Because we got to fight that. We got to go back to fighting that. And for me, I tell people, man, the police stick together no matter what. They stick together no matter what. Police can kill somebody and they won't say nothing. You know what I mean? No matter what, they stick together across the country. And until we get organized like that, I mean, the National Guard will be able to come and disrupt anything we're doing. Until we get organized across the country, it's going to start with our small cities. But until we have representatives in every city across the country that's in some type of order or structure, they'll always be able to impose the threat on us that we won't be able to impose back, or they'll always be able to force us to be friendly, like he was saying earlier. And it's the only way we win. I think leaders and activists, the leaders have to tell each other, it's the only way we win. The leaders have to say, you know what, this is stupid. Y'all need to, as people that follow me, y'all need to stop talking about people. As leaders have people that follow them. And it's the same thing as I say for white people. Your followers, you have to tell them the same thing. Hey, stop talking about that other group. Hey, stop coming on my page talking about that. We talking about justice for George Floyd. Why are you coming on here talking about what the other people doing? Why are you coming on here dissing the other leaders? We can't allow that in our spaces. We can't allow our groups to be disrespecting other groups. And it starts with that. And once we do that, we'll be able to come together. We at least got to have a united front for people. People got to think we together. Okay.
Thank you. So
I'm gonna jump in really quick, Anita. My father always taught me to think of new levels, new devils. And so when you attain a certain spot in life, you're going to be faced with adversity. And so it is not the adversity that you're faced with, it is how you deal with that adversity. I've never really identified myself as a leader. I've just said that I am an engaged citizen. And my engagement level has just increased because of my passion and my cause for wanting to do something about what I see wrong. And so, that has caused some frustration, some confusion, for people to question certain things. And that's totally fine. I'm okay with that, because that means I'm doing the right thing. And I'm doing something that is irritating, whether it is the system or those who don't want certain things to change. And so folks who are in a position of, this is the way that we've always done it, those are the people that I fear, because those are the people who are resistant to what we're actually talking about right now, because they may be benefiting from it. So, I would just say that resistance is going to come. It is how you deal with that adversity. We are still human beings. I'm a human being, so that doesn't mean I don't get mad. I definitely get mad, but then I have to channel that and say, what is my greater purpose in this? You know, God has called me to something, and I have to turn around and answer that calling. And it may not be the way my response may not be the way that old Tiffany used to respond, but the new Tiffany, who is focused on, you know, what it is that I want to see and the greater that I want to see and the greater that I want to feel for us and people, my response level has to be different. My action has to be different, and my engagement has to be different. And so if 2020 and this whole thing hasn't taught me anything, it has taught me that my style and how I show up, it has to be different, and I can't turn back from that. And so hopefully that propels other people to say that they can do the same thing, because people, you know, they look up to us, whether or not we agree or think that or know that, they do, and our influence matters. And so when there is infighting, that infighting, not only does it hurt us as a people, and hurt all of us who are, whether they on the front lines, in the middle, or the back, it helps it damages the cause. And so I totally agree that we have to find a lane and have to say to ourselves that this division can no longer be. The pettiness can no longer be. Our mission, our focus has to be on disrupting this system as we see it and making it better for how we want to see it and feel it.
Thank you. Thank you. That was well said. And so it is 1 o'clock and we're wrapping up our conversation. But if there is time, I will go ahead and let Representative David Bowen and Representative Kaylin Haywood say their last few comments about what does action look like, and how can we move in that direction?
Yeah, action looks like the people that continue to find out and get involved in their everyday grind. Some people have determined that their everyday grind is protesting. Some people have determined their everyday grind is contacting elected officials, emailing them, calling them, postcarding them. Some people have figured out their everyday grind is social media and spreading the message. Whatever your everyday grind is, do it every day and contribute to the movement so that we can see progress, so that we can have more people for us than against us. I think at the end of the day, we're in a pivotal moment right now, and that we are going to win this battle. The question is when. The question is how many people will stand with us rather than fight against us to see that change. And it doesn't mean that we will get it automatically. It means that we are in this fight to see it through.
Yeah. And then Representative Kaylin Haywood, would you like to conclude with us? One last comment.
Well, just thank everybody again for all the panelists, Frank for being the keynote. Thank y'all for having us. But my message to everybody is two things. As I mentioned before, it's an all hands on deck effort. And we had a point in history where we can't afford for anybody to not be playing their part. Whatever your part may be, it may be something that simple, just retweeting a tweet. Whatever your part may be, you have to play your part. And make sure the folks around you are also playing their part. And when this is all said and done, I also think we are going to win. We are going to see change actually come. And for folks who are trying to figure out if they should get engaged and when they should get engaged, ask yourself two things. What can you do to get engaged? And secondly, what part of history, what side of history do you want to be on when this is all said and done? Because this is a history making thing. Is we got to go vote. I think that's important. Like right now, we see people who are making the laws. We got to go vote. So it's important. I know people have mixed some feelings and emotions around going to go vote and get engaged and about do their votes matter. I'm telling you, your votes do matter. For my seat, Representative Bowen's seat, we could win or lose these seats by one vote. And that can determine who's going to be in the state legislature to talk about these policies next session. That's going to determine who's going to help draw the maps next session, talk about how you represent it for the next 10 years, how resources will be allocated. So it's important that we all go vote and get engaged, regardless of how we feel about the process or the current system. And we got to make sure we hold everyone accountable and bring about that change. But I just wanted to say thanks to everybody that got engaged. Let's begin engaging here and making their voices heard. And keep doing it. We support you. Some of us on the ground with you, but we support you and we want you to keep going. So keep going. Don't give up. It might get hard. You may be hit with criticism. So keep going.
Thank you. Thank you. So that, oh, and go ahead. Yep.
Hey, Lynn, I just want to say, I love you, brother. I got to say one thing. We don't think we gonna win. We gonna win. It's not a think thing. This ain't a negotiation. This a demand. We got to make sure
My fault.
we know that.
I said thing. We are definitely going to win this. We gonna win. My apologies. We gonna win this.
Stopping until we win. That's all.
All right, thank you to everyone who joined our conversation this morning. I think this was a much needed conversation to just start us getting back on this journey of building Milwaukee back up again and creating a new narrative for our city as we continue to value the people who are leading the movement and their talent, their time, and their treasure that they are sharing with us. And so with that being said, we will see you guys at the next few days of On the Table. So feel free to register for the upcoming sessions tomorrow and on Wednesday. We have 6 other conversations coming for you. And so stay tuned for those. And on behalf of the Greater Milwaukee Foundation, thank you for your participation.